Hello everybody, I'm Eternal Flame here, and today we're making a video to explore the full potential of 10 Shadows. And I know what some of you guys might be thinking. Eternal, didn't you already create one to explore the full potential of 10 Shadows? Like 2 videos of that? And my simple answer is yes and no. In those videos, I specifically focused on advancing Megumi's full potential and everything we knew about Megumi. I didn't actually focus on creating a 10 Shadow user themselves. That, and in both of those videos, I was kind of focused heavily on the potential of either Megumi being able to become the Shadows and just gain all of their abilities, or just what a true power Mahoraga would be like, and what the true power of a full entire fusion of all the 10 Shadows, including Mahoraga, would be like. I never really gave it my Eternal Flame spin of how I like to explore the full potential, which is what the entire point of this video is going to be. To create a near-perfect sorcerer for the 10 Shadows technique as a whole, and to advance the technique to its absolute limits and see how far we can push it, while still being in the realm of being born as a normal person, so we're not going to give them things like Sukuna's physical body and all of that good jazz. So yeah, let's get on to the video of trying to create a perfect 10 Shadows user. However, with this video, I'm actually going to have a little bit of a goal, where in comparison to my other videos, I just explore the full potential of a technique and how I could advance it. In this video, I have a specific goal on top of wanting to explore the full potential of a technique. Well, actually, I have 2 goals. My first goal is going to be able to defeat a Gojo clan member or 6 Eyes plus Limitless member without using Mahoraga. Or more accurately, to convince you guys that this 10 Shadows user would be capable of defeating them. And to give the example of how strong they're going to be, basically imagine what would happen if you gave Pre-Awakened Gojo Hollow Purple and Red. Now, if you think Pre-Awakened Gojo and Post-Awakened Gojo have the same stats and they just got new abilities, then ignore this entire section entirely, just imagine it as that. But if you do think that Post-Awakened Gojo has different stats and is just overall stronger, which I know some people do, then imagine this as Pre-Awakened Gojo if Pre-Awakened Gojo had both Red and Hollow Purple. But they're not going to have the constantly active Limitless barrier because that is a Gojo exclusive thing. And the other goal of this video will be able to convince you that this 10 Shadows user will be capable of taming Mahoraga. Now, the reason I'm doing this, both as my goals, is purely because of the fact that a lot of people have a very different belief to me, which I believe that the 10 Shadows user that fought the 6 Eyes plus Limitless user that Gojo was talking about just straight up got a mutual kill on them, and they didn't actually summon Mahoraga. Purely because of the fact that I think Megumi was straight up wrong, and the narrative is just straight up portraying that Megumi does not understand what Gojo is trying to tell him, that Megumi has the potential to reach his level. Because Megumi's entire logic was, to beat you doesn't mean I have to reach your level. Anyway, I apologize for this really long-winded intro, but let's actually get into advancing the 10 Shadows technique as a whole. Hey you! Yeah, you. I'm here to hook you up with some really good anime merch and merch for comic book lovers. Now, do you love Jujutsu Kaisen, Dragon Ball, Naruto, One Piece, Bleach, Marvel, DC, and all of the above, and do you have your own nerd stuff that you're into? Well, I got some good stuff for you today, as our friends at Fan Dominion are here to hook you up because they got the best merch. If you've been around here for a while, you'll know that they've been with our channel for a long time. So you can take it from me that they got good merch, and they will hook you up with the highest quality merch. After all, I really recommend them. They got some really good merch, and I'm gonna hook you all up with something special. If you use the code TEF, really simple, really easy to remember, made it simple for all y'all, you get a 10% discount. Yeah, that's right, a 10% discount for all the merch you could possibly buy. And I guarantee you, you'll be happy with whatever you get. So, you guys make some money, I'll give you a discount, I make some money, we all get happy. Hope you all enjoy, and let's continue on with the rest of the video. Remember to check out Fan Dominion. Link in the description down below, as well as our code. Now, advancing the 10 Shadows technique is going to be insanely difficult because the 10 Shadows technique is overall a really hard technique, purely because of one simple fact with the 10 Shadows. While you do start out with 2 of the dogs, you also have to tame every single one of the Shikigami, but you are able to use the other Shikigami to help you in taming the Shikigami. And the Shikigami do grow stronger with the user themselves, with the potential exception being Mahoraga, because Mahoraga is just overall weird. And for those of you who want proof of the Shikigami do growing with the user, this is a direct statement from Mahito to Junpei that Junpei's Shikigami will grow with him and get stronger as he grows, so that's likely the case for all Shikigami, because I don't see why Mahito would make a specific Junpei example if it was only limited to Junpei and how he would even know that, which is why it's likely the case with all Shikigami. So this 10 Shadows user is going to need to have an extremely good mentality to growing. Because unlike Megumi Fushiguro, who has an issue for growing of he is very much a team player, And on top of that, he thinks he's able to solve every single issue at the cost of his life, at least for the early parts of Jujutsu Kaisen. This 10 Shadows user is not going to have that issue. After all, they grew up in the Zenin clan, and they're going to have pride in themselves because they have the treasure technique. So they are not going to have that mentality. Instead, they're going to have a much more growth-based mentality, where they're going to want to make sure to figure out every single aspect of the 10 Shadows, of the treasure technique, in order to push it to its potential at a point that has never been seen before, to even do things like surpass the Heian era. This level of mentality should allow the 10 Shadows to grow even faster. Stack that with the fact that we're going to place them on a bunch of missions that are going to push them to their limits, and immediately teach them the principles of the Black Flash in hopes that they might land one or a few in order to amplify themselves even further. As it's directly stated, after you land the first Black Flash, there's a massive difference between sorcerers who can land the Black Flash and who can't. Then it's immediately going to help this sorcerer get much stronger, and as a result of that, get the Divine Dogs much stronger in the process. However, they're still going to be training on their off time as well, which is where the second part of the training is going to come in order to make them even more powerful. They are going to funnel the amount of curse energy they are not using in a mission midway, usually right before they go to sleep. Like, I can imagine this being like an hour routine, into creating a curse tool, similar to that of the Dark Edge sword that Megumi has access to, but just to keep infusing curse energy into a weapon. That way, even when they themselves aren't fighting, their curse energy itself doesn't go to waste and ends up getting put into a weapon for them to utilize further in order to make them strike even harder than they already do. Now, this curse tool is going to be very important later on into the video, but it will not be important right now. So for now, just put this in your mind right now that they do have a sword that has their curse energy infused into it. Now, with this setup, with the likely chance they've eventually landed a Black Flash, from their mindset being one of the better ones in Jujutsu Kaisen, from them having a curse tool, from them constantly training, as well as making sure to get stronger and push themselves on mission, I could see this easily being a grade 1 level sorcerer, but we're not done yet. After all, this video is about the 10 Shadows, and I see it being very likely by this point they do have several of the Shadows tamed directly by themselves. After all, if Megumi was able to at the start of the series somehow both have Nue and Orochi tamed, and then later on get Elephant tamed before he even awakened his domain, then this sorcerer is most definitely going to be able to tame all 3 of those Shikigami, as well as Rabbit Escape. They also would have Morning Tiger tame, but we have no idea what that thing even does because we barely see it fight. So I'm going to pretend for the sake of this video it doesn't exist. And for the sake of this video, we're just going to pretend the white dog is the 10th shadow and not actually this, purely because it really doesn't make any difference either way. This is when we're going to begin another one of the plans, because I see it being very likely though that one of the 2 dogs died, because while these dogs are definitely going to be stronger than the ones in canon, it won't be enough to keep up with the strong amount of opponents and foes that the sorcerer is going to have to fight on these missions. The stronger curses that are going to keep getting upgraded and upgraded, which is going to result in likely one of them dying. And this is where we're going to take advantage of one of the functions of totality. Now, it does seem to be implied totality does take a little bit of time for it to actually finish fusing the Shikigami together. Around a month or so, based on how much time it took for the Shikigami to fuse and show itself off in Goodwill, because Megumi doesn't show them until later on in Goodwill, despite how useful Divine Totality would likely be against Todo. As well as Nue and Orochi not fusing until literally Sukuna takes over his body. So instead, we're going to actually increase the time it takes for the totality to fuse together. Doing this for the likes of a Binding Vow, because we know you can use Binding Vows to do things like hold off your cursed energy, as Nanami does in order to buff himself when he's in overtime mode. And because this offers such a huge risk to the user of it, because they won't have access to a powerful Shikigami, that when it was resummoned by Megumi was capable of damaging the likes of Hanami, one of the most durable cursed spirits in all Jujutsu Kaisen, and it's going to be in the hands of a much stronger user. This is going to be quite heavy risk, but at the same time, once they are finished totalitying together, it will make Divine Totality that much stronger because we decided to make it take that much more time through the likes of a Binding Vow. During this time, the 10 Shadows user is going to both train and continue to experiment with their technique, getting stronger and stronger until the dog is ready. I can also see it being very likely that they're going to be able to tame the bull and the deer during this time frame as well, especially the deer, because the deer hasn't really shown any combat abilities, and the bull is kind of really easy to counter, like literally just fight it in a range, because the bull can only run in a straight direction, and yeah, you can tame it pretty easily in my opinion. Through experimentation, though, they're going to end up finding about the two special other qualities of the 10 Shadows, which is the ability to both go inside of the 10 Shadows as well as drag other people into the 10 Shadows and store things in the 10 Shadows, as well as partial totality, which partial totality is basically using traits of Shikigami to create much weaker Shikigami, but they still have the same abilities. And this is going to be where we really start advancing the technique, because so far I've only really created a really strong 10 Shadows user, but now we're about to go really ham. Now there is something I really want to heavily establish. Partial totality doesn't seem to take that much curse energy, considering the fact that Megumi creates basically, I think, somewhere around 9 Toad Shikigami in the fight against Todo that each have the wings. They definitely don't take a lot of curse energy, especially for someone who's going to already have a stronger base than Megumi Fushiguro and have more curse energy than him. So keep that in mind when we get to the insane stuff I'm about to say. I'm about to push binding vows like I have never ever pushed them before, because we're about to go nuts. So up first, we're going to combine 2 Shikigami in particular, which those 2 Shikigami are going to be the rabbit and Nue itself, to make a partial totality of that. To make basically bunnies that have sparks coming off of it. And I already know what you might be thinking. Eternal Flame, partial totalities are overall just much weaker than the normal Shikigami. This won't really do much. Normally, I'd agree with you on that. However, this is when binding vows come in. Now, you all know Mei, right? And Mei's main move of Bird Strike, where Bird Strike is an incredibly powerful move. A move that Sukuna, Kenny, and Gojo all want to make sure they don't get hit by. A move so strong, it's capable of basically one-shotting a special grade curse that could have been amped by Kenny even further because of his curse energy. All in exchange for a measly crow's life. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel this Shikigami would likely have more firepower if its life was sacrificed than a crow would, between the combination of Nue and Rabbit Escape. Of course, they aren't the true 10 Shadows, so overall they would be much weaker than, let's say, if we were to sacrifice Nue directly. However, I still feel that they would likely be stronger than a crow, if not just on the same level as Bird Strike as a whole. But the importance of this is you can use multiple of these Shikigami, not just one, which is where it's going to end up becoming even more powerful and even more broken. So imagine several of these Shikigami that you're sacrificing the lives of that are just partial totalities, and they do no effect to the real technique because they are partial, and then they just explode with this similar to Bird Strike level of damage on an opponent, and it's just several of them, considering how dangerous just one Bird Strike has shown itself to be. Furthermore, if partial totality is still able to use the abilities of the original Shikigami, which I see no reason that it wouldn't be able to, these life-sacrificing bunnies would be able to make clones of themselves that could also sacrifice their own lives, that would keep bombarding people with several hundreds of these attacks. It just would go absolutely nuts, and I feel so bad for whoever would get hit by it, because it fixes one of the main weaknesses Bird Strike overall has, which is its rarity to hit, because of how many bunnies we can see from Rabbit Escape, because there are so many rabbits that come from Rabbit Escapes. Now, if you don't think that Rabbit Escape can actually sacrifice the clones of themselves in order to make a life-sacrificing binding vow, then that's fine. However, I do want to point out that is a possibility nonetheless, so I'm talking about that here and now. Now, this is where we're going to get to our next set of binding vows. Not every single Shikigami is used in every single fight, which is something a lot of people have noticed, me and myself included, which is where we're going to take advantage of that, because we're also not going to have every single Shikigami out in the field. We're going to place a binding vow on the likes of Gamma as well as Round Deer in order to not allow them to exit our shadow, other than for a few specific parts of them that I'm going to get into now. For Gamma, the only part of Gamma they'll be able to exit this shadow is going to be its tongue, and by extension of that, it will end up gaining a massive buff. Now, this tongue is insanely fast. When it was on the weaker partial Shikigami, it was able to move Megumi out of the way of Todo's hits, so Todo was completely blitzing him before. And when it was Gamma himself, in the anime, Gamma allowed Megumi to dodge Toji of all people. So basically, take this stronger Gamma, because it'd be on a stronger user, and amp it up by a binding vow that only permits its tongue to leave the shadows and not actually its body itself. Now, I'm going to be honest, I forgot about Orochi, but Orochi is also permanently staying in the shadow. It's not just those two I talked about, which will, by extension, also give Orochi a buff, who Orochi is already strong enough in the extremely early arcs to literally lift Sukuna into the air. Now, Sukuna wasn't fighting back against it, but it still has quite a bit of power nonetheless. And both of these Shikigami are going to have a very, very unique role, which that unique role is going to be one of two things. Either A, to bring the user themselves into the shadow and launch them around, or B, and this is going to be the more important role, to bring other people into the shadow and literally drown them in the shadow. We know it's possible to drown people in the shadows because that was a way that Megumi could have taken out Reggie because there is no oxygen to breathe in the shadow. Sack that if we use partial totality to create smaller, weaker versions of them with binding limitations that don't allow them to exit the shadow, and you get up an insane shadow combo that would wipe out a lot of people. Now I know what you guys might be saying. Isn't this strategy very counterproductive to keeping Roundeer inside of the shadows? I would agree with you if it wasn't for the fact that we literally see the shadows are kind of like an ocean in terms of size. Like, the user's shadow in comparison to the shadow itself is actually kind of nuts in comparison to how big it actually is. So, yeah. Like, Mahoraga is literally able to hop out of Sukuna's shadow and actually fit in there, which is absolutely insane. Anyway, the purpose of keeping Roundeer inside of the 10 shadows will be in case you need a really quick restore, you can just dip inside the shadows, fully restore yourself, and then dip out. Because Roundeer has straight up shown healing capabilities, so even if you don't have RCT and this user doesn't have RCT, then they do have the healing Roundeer, which can just hop into the shadow, heal themselves, and then hop out. Now remember how I talked about this sword? This is where the sword actually comes in to be a little bit more important for situations where the user can't actually hop into the shadows. We find out something extremely interesting through Nanami Kento in the most recent chapter, which is the fact that curse tools that you have used for a long while can get your curse technique infused into them, and this is where this sword comes in. We're going to stick this sword into the shadows for a long while to let it seep in there while using it constantly with 10 shadows, in order to make sure that the sword itself has some parts of the 10 shadows technique. Now we don't know in full degree how it functions, but this should very much be possible nonetheless. This will allow this sword to be an access point for the shadows for the user themselves, and the most important part of it is it'll basically allow the user, if they want to, fully regenerate themselves by accessing the shadows if they're unable to dip into the shadows just by touching the blade. Furthermore, it could have things like lightning properties like Kamutoke due to Nue being a lightning Shikigami. Now, it probably wouldn't be as powerful as Kamutoke, but it could certainly still have lightning properties. Or it could have the ability to shoot out water thanks to Max Elephant. But most of all, it could have a pretty insane ability of the sword being able to drag people into the shadows as well, which would catch a lot of people off guard and make the sword even more powerful for the user to use, and be a kind of permanent way of infusing 10 shadows into the clan forever. Now there's one more aspect of 10 shadows that we're very much going to end up taking advantage of, which is the ability to manifest traits of the Shikigami and actually fire those out. Gojo, in the battle against Gojo, Sukuna was capable of manifesting Maximum Elephant's water without even summoning Maximum Elephant and then compressing it down into that of a piercing blood-like attack, which our channel has come to call Piercing Aqua, by the way. So yeah, we're going to learn how to use that and how to manifest several of the Shikigami's abilities, such as both Max Elephant as well as Nue, and how to manifest those abilities, because firing a water arrow with lightning coming off of it, that would do some massive damage to a lot of people. Or even filling the area with water without even needing to summon Max Elephant and then electrocuting the water, shocking whatever's inside of it. That would be an absolutely terrifying combo. Now you might be wondering, why am I going this far? Why am I doing all of this, and how is this going to counter a 6 plus limitless user? Well, I'm going to be 100% real with you guys. The last 15 minutes I just spent in order to make plans to counter Mahoraga and actually beat Mahoraga. I wasn't even focused on the 6 plus limitless user. This is how far a 10 shadows user would need to go in order to actually beat Mahoraga, which is absolutely nuts and just speaks to how strong Mahoraga is. And even then, I'm not entirely confident this would work alone, so we're going to add in another plan, which is just going to be Piercing Bull running for a long while before we do summon Mahoraga, and the moment we summon Mahoraga, Piercing Bull is going to slam into him, and then several life-sacrificing partial totalities are going to slam into Mahoraga as well, with lightning exploding, all in an effort to kill him. If this doesn't work, I don't know what will, but I'm leaving that up to you if you guys do think that would work or not. However, now we're going to get into how they would fight the 6-size user without Mahoraga. And in order for them to stand a chance, they're going to need a domain expansion, and this is where we're going to get into the perfected version of a 10 Shadows domain expansion. Now thankfully we already know what a sure hit of a domain Shikigami would actually look like in Jujutsu Kaisen, because Dagon is a Shikigami user, and that is the sure hit infused into his technique, where Dagon's sure hit allows the Shikigami to instantly appear appear on an opponent's body. Now, while against most people this would definitely be enough to take them out, it is more than likely possible that the 6 Eyes plus Limitless user is going to have access to a domain expansion of their own, and that is where we're going to include even more binding vows into the 10 Shadows domain expansion. After all, the 6 Eyes plus Limitless domain will probably be extremely refined because of how the 6 Eyes even function, so it'll be insanely difficult to just reach that level normally through training. Of course, it's still possible to be able to clash with it and reach it normally, but we don't have time for that. Now, we know it's possible to weaken certain attributes in order to strengthen other attributes within a domain expansion. For example, Gojo was capable of swapping the inside and exterior barriers, making the inside weak to attacks and the outside of it strong against attacks. That's one way to make it stronger. Another way to make it stronger, though, is to limit aspects of the sure hit attack and make it less and less dangerous. For example, Hikari Kinji's sure hit of his domain is just explaining the rules to you, which makes it excellent in Tug of War specifically. I'm going to put the translation from King of Lightning up on screen now, thanks to King of Lightning, because this was actually the proper translation, this just wasn't included in the manga. However, Hikari's domain is much stronger in Tug of Wars. This is because of the nature of the sure hit, so we're going to do something very, very similar by limiting the amount of Shikigami that can actually appear, or limiting the specific types of Shikigami that can be utilized as the sure hit within the domain. Now, the specific Shikigami we're going to limit to this is we will not be able to use Totality, Max Elephant, as well as Piercing Ox. Now, this should offer a suitable boost for the 10 Shadows domain. Furthermore, the domain is also going to be a little bit different from Megumi, where instead of it being 2 people standing on shadows, it's going to be both of them inside of a shadow. So, while the opponent is getting hit by sure hits, they also have to deal with the fact they are now drowning in shadows and unable to breathe inside this domain, which the user themselves will not be affected by this issue. Furthermore, the user might also be capable of summoning shadow clones either to take hits or to drag someone even deeper into the shadows and continue to drown them. Most of all, even if the domain clash doesn't work and it ends up breaking both domains, they can use the sword or just round deer as a whole to heal themselves and heal their brain back to normal and do it again. Because the sword is not them. The sword has their curse technique infused into them, and they are not them themselves, so the sword would be able to heal them in the process. So the brain cooldown wouldn't exactly be an issue for them either for after you use a curse technique, for you to be able to use the sword to recover your curse technique even faster. And well, that was about everything I could actually think about for adding to the 10 Shadows in order to utilize its full potential. Without, of course, talking about Mahoraga and that type of stuff, because I have another entire video talking about Mahoraga and how strong a Mahoraga complete totality would be. So yeah, basically imagine this 10 Shadows user, but with Mahoraga and everything else I talked about, and you end up with an insanely powerful 10 Shadows user. Now, how strong this 10 Shadows user would be, I'm not entirely certain right now, but I do certainly think they'd be in the top 5. If they actually did exist in Jujutsu Kaisen. But I wanted to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think on this entire 10 Shadows user? Do you think most of this stuff is possible? Do you think I'm reaching just a little bit? I don't know. I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. I'm gonna see y'all later. Peace out. Have a good day.